Lately I've been browsing, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Smash or Pass podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty_DadFF. Joining me as usual, which is only our second episode, but my man Mike Lamoureux, that's at Fantasy Nerd Boy. How you doing, Mike? I mean, like, last week was so much fun, and we got such a great response. I'm so excited for episode 2.
Yeah, I'm excited too, and I like how you fumbled my name there because actually you dropped my full name for the first time on the pod last week, and now everyone is in my DM saying Lamoureux. Lamoureux, trade me this guy. Lamoureux, I want this, and I'm like, all right, no, the real name's out, and I'm no longer Fantasy Nerd Boy to half these guys. So, but
we're gonna have to get you a nickname, and everybody just calls me Dad. You know, this reminds me of I saw. You know, we're really just days away from launching the Discord, and I'm starting to look at things. I saw a Discord meme where it was like someone giving somebody a dirty look where someone dropped their real name and their government name instead of their gamer tag. You know what I mean? And that was kind of what it was like when I first started doing this. I was like, Mike Royer. Nobody even knows who Mike Royer is. It's the Dynasty Dad. Like, that's everybody just calls me Dad. So, you know, for you, I think that brand is really coming along where everybody knows you as Nerd Boy. You know, and that's kind of where it is. So, guys,
I don't want to have to switch it up. So
right, we're so excited tonight because what we're gonna do is we're gonna take Mike and I were just in Smash Except 7, you know, the reboot draft, and we're trying to bring you guys. I mean, we are right on the verge of draft season. Mike and I are degenerates, so we've been doing them already, but we want to give you, you know, some of the ideas of where guys are going, so you have an idea. I put a thread out there to give you everything in the first 10 picks, just a blueprint of what the drafts are looking like, who's going there, and we're going to give you some smash or pass scenarios, some guys that are just extreme values. But Mike, when you're looking right now at draft season, what's the biggest thing that you're taking away from? I know you've done 2 or 3 already. What's the biggest thing you've taken away from your drafts?
So, you know, I like you said, you're killing it with the content. You're pumping out all the stuff as far as, you know, ADP goes and what you're seeing with drafts currently. But I love to do year-round startups because you're going to get an idea of how everything shifts with just the smallest little thing. You know, with Pollard's injury, he's going to slide maybe a round or 2 already. We're currently in a startup right now, and these little things, they seem so small, but there's seismic shifts in startup values because people are very reactionary. And, you know, that's a great thing to take advantage of when people, you know, see an injury or they hear about somebody dropping passes in camp or whatever it is. You know, that reactionary thing that people go through is, I got to fade this guy. I don't, you know, hearing all this negative talk about him. So there's great value all around. Especially when people are anticipating a heavy running back class coming in. So you're seeing a lot of running backs that would go normally 2nd, 3rd round, sliding all the way to the 5th and 6th round.
And I think
a lot of crazy stuff.
That's the biggest thing, is these little areas where drafting now you can take advantage of things. We're trying to put you ahead of the game, you know. And I know I made a trade in Smash 7 with Dangerous. That's at D. Is it Madoche? Madoche. He's an awesome guy in the Patreon, and he gave me. I'm punting, you know. So imagine that, but I'm punting, and right now I gave him Pollard for the 108, and I think, you know, that was something that instantly it changed, right? Like, now we're looking at more at the 112, and, you know, I said that's something that drops off immediately. Hold on one second, dude. I don't know what's going. There's like a squeaking noise, and I could definitely edit it out, but it sounded like a coffee pot.
It's actually the heater that I'm next to right here. We have old school heaters that hiss and moan at me. So yeah, this mic is pretty crazy. I'm glad I got the mic upgrade, but also it's picking up on every little thing here.
I got you. All right, that's why I can definitely cut that part out. That's why I was just like, dude, it sounds like a teapot, and I'm like,
What's
Oh,
great, it's just picking up everything. So I
yeah.
mean, I can't move right now. I have to stay completely still.
All
Um,
right. All right.
I think
So,
the heater's all done though. So
all right. I'm gonna leave it. We'll take like a quick 10-second break. I don't know what the last thing I said was, but we'll edit out of that. You were talking about.
you were
Um,
talking about
I'm,
Pollard and
I think we're gonna
trading
cut.
for the 108.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna cut that out. And I'll just you. The last thing you said was we were talking about like these seismic, these shifts that go from there. And I'm just gonna go right from there because I kind of almost stumbled a little bit because it was like I was hearing this teapot and I'm like, what the heck, man?
Yeah,
All
sorry,
right.
brother.
No, you're
I
good.
don't know what you're hearing right now,
We're working out.
unfortunately.
We're
Yeah.
working out through the kinks. All right. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. There's these everything in Dynasty is cyclical, and we have these small changes. And I think the biggest thing with us at Smash or Pass is we're trying to bring you current Dynasty values, the market value, and how it changes. And I think to your point, I mean, right now is the time where you can take a playoff game, you can take an injury like to Pollard, and you can capitalize on it. And tonight we're going to talk about some of those areas where we can really separate ourselves in that startup, and it is startup season, so that's where let's just jump right into it. The biggest trend that I've seen, is that first round, right? I mean, we have out of 12 guys, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 quarterbacks go. I mean, and that's pretty standard. I think those are the same 9 guys. You might have 1 or 2 jump in there, but the first round is absolutely dominated by quarterbacks. And for Smash Accept this week, we're going to be talking about that super flex, super shortage. But the key to this is getting your picks, navigating the tiers, and these 9 quarterbacks. You want to definitely get one of these guys, and you lucked out in Smash Accept 7 to get 2 of them because I traded you Lamar. But I mean, talk to me about your process here because a lot of people they want to trade up into that 1, 2, and 3 for Allen Hurts and Mahomes. But so much of this is just navigating that first round to make sure you get a quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not big on trading up or trying to trade back into the first on most startups. I think usually if I land a high pick, I'm trading back and I'm trying to accrue value and then kind of go forward with that. If I can trade back and then go forward again at a discounted price from what I traded back, you know what I mean? If I get a nice trade back and then I can trade back in, I'll do that. But I definitely usually go with how it feels. I kind of never go into a startup the same way. I kind of let everything fall into place as far as what these guys are doing. So I let these, the other managers kind of make my choice for me most of the time, depending on how they go. So I don't really always have that game plan, but I hit the 101 in Smash. So it was, auto Josh Allen, and then, hey, I'm already in compete mode right now. So, I couldn't trade out of that pick. So it was, it really, you already set your mindset to, hey, I'm trying to win some money this year, and I'm going for it. So,
Well, I think that's really a great point because you want to go in with an open mindset. So many people are like, Dad, I'm doing a startup. What do I do? How should I go about the first round? And on the flip side, I had 112, right? So I'm sitting back there and I'm like, man, what am I going to get at 112? Like, who can I move up and get? Or should I sit back and let the value fall to me? And I think when you have that 101, Josh Allen or Mahomes, whoever you're interested in that spot, you were at a scenario where it's like you can move back and get some extreme value if you're in there, but then you got to go with that frame of thought that if you're doing that, your direction might change. For me, it was a matter of just I did move up in that first round. I had the 201. I threw a 24 second to move up to 106, which I thought was absolute smash except to get Justin Jefferson. But let's talk about that, those first 5 picks. It's Allen, it's Hurts, which was just a fantastic thing for me to see where all off season I had been touting Jalen Hurts. I started taking him in the second round when we were in January last year at this time. By the time we got to the season, it was late first. Now all of a sudden he's in that top 3. And I think it's justified. I think Jalen Hurts really belongs in there. And it was just kind of fun for me to see him go above Mahomes. I can't fault anybody for taking anybody in those 3. If you can get any of those out of that and get a little bit extra value, I'm all for it. It's tier 2 where we start to really separate some things. So you got Burrow went 4, Herbert 5, and for me it's still Jefferson at 6. I love Fields, I love Lawrence and Chase in that area, but I mean Jefferson is that guy where I made that move and now I'm like, okay, I don't have I don't have that QB1, so I'm in a scenario now where I think I'm going to lean in towards a punt. But the guy I want to talk about right now, Mike, is he really had a coming out party. QB8 overall in the season. Smash except 6 where you and I were in. I took him in the late second, and it's Trevor Lawrence. So I got to ask you, Trevor Lawrence at the 109, is that a smash or a pass for you? Because we're looking at a spot where he is that up and coming quarterback. I mean, is this someone that you are willing to invest in at that 109?
Oh yeah, 109 is a smash for me. He was the golden boy coming in. I remember in that draft, people were trading 3 firsts to even get and touch 101 in that draft. So
yeah, I was writing for Dynasty Happy Hour at the time, and I actually had in that startup that I did with them, someone took him at 106 startup value. You know what I mean? And that hasn't. It's been a long road because we had that rookie season there where he kind of dropped off back into that second, third round, and now he's back up where I think he belongs.
Yeah. I think 109 is definitely a smash. I'm not going to say I would have him any higher than that, but I think that's exactly where he should be right now. I love the shift. We see Dak and Kyler. Kyler obviously more injury related, but they're getting kicked out of the first round, and they're in the mid-second, early to mid-second, and Fields and T-Law kind of took their spot in the first round. Rightfully so. Obviously, Fields is a cheat code, I think, as far as fantasy production can go. He can get an improvement on the O-line and get one weapon out there and be an absolute stud in my mind. So I like the movement of Dak coming out there, even though I do like Dak. I think he's underrated in fantasy.
Yeah, and I think this is like that changing of the guard where, I mean, a lot of people, I put out my current rankings, and they're both above, I have them both above Watson, Dak, and I think, right, and Kyler, and I'm getting a lot of feedback of that where people aren't agreeing with that. And I think one thing you and I are really good at doing is assessing that talent and being ahead of the curve. Like these guys, that's what I was hoping to get at 112. And then people, they moved up ahead of time. And I love that because it's in Dynasty, if you start over believing in a guy that's 28, 29, as opposed to a guy who's 22, 23, you're setting yourself up. You know what I mean? I think Fields and Lawrence, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. Like Fields has no weapons. Lawrence is going to get Ridley next year, maybe even more, beef up that offensive line, and he's already starting to ascend to a point where I am in a lot of leagues right now where I have Justin Herbert. I'm trying to get Lawrence plus, and I think you can. I still think you can get Lawrence and a mid to late 23 first. If you can get that kind of action, I'm all for it. Like I know Burrow's hot right now. I think Lawrence, if you can get Lawrence plus or Fields plus for either of those guys, I'm on the field of I'm making that move, because I want to insulate my rosters right now. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would love doing that. Not to say that I don't think Herbert is going to improve on this last season that he had. I think it's an outlier as far as his fantasy production goes. But like you said, being ahead of the curve, I think T-Law and Herbert will be equal in value at some point. I think very soon, actually, maybe as soon as next year. So getting any plus on top of that, just kind of like Lamar and Fields. As far as everything's concerned and startup value goes, Fields is ahead of Lamar right now. And people were always the question, I think, throughout the season was Fields or Lamar. And, what would you add on to Fields to get Lamar? And, I was telling people you're going to have to add on to Lamar to get Fields pretty soon. And I think it's already happened as far as.
That is the way to win. I mean, in Smash Except One, I dealt Kyler Murray for Chris Godwin and Jalen Hurts, in February because I believed in Jalen Hurts. I thought Jalen Hurts was going to ascend that way. Then I ended up trading Godwin for what ended up being Godwin and a piece for what ended up being the 101. So it was Bijan and Jalen Hurts for Kyler Murray and Chris Godwin in that situation, and People were like, at the time, you're like, that was a foolish move. And you're like, there's a plan, right? If you guys listen to us at Smash or Pass and Smash Accept, like we're going to put you in a place where you're going to be able to compete and have those assets because what we really try to do is really get on those next breakouts and be ahead of the curve. When it comes to being ahead of the curve, we got to talk about the 111 here, right? The 111 in our draft was Bijan Robinson. Now, you and I have been very bullish that Bijan Robinson is that dynasty RB1. I got to say, we're talking first round startup value here. So if he goes at 111 in your league, is that a smash or pass for you? Because you're passing up on at that particular time. You know, we have this interesting Lamar fell in this situation. That's not going to happen in most drafts. But you got Bijan, and then you got to compare it to Lamb, AJ Brown, Waddle, Brees Hall. Those are those next couple guys that usually go here. So are you smashing that value?
I take Bijan over all those receivers you mentioned and Brees. I don't take him over Lamar. I wouldn't do that. I would still have, Chase, JJ, and then, the 9 quarterbacks.
Yep. I'm right on board with that because
then I would go Bijan. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's my question then with Bijan Robinson is I started talking about this a little bit with John when we did the 2023 first round picks. If you guys haven't heard that, smash accept. We just covered that. It was phenomenal. It was so exciting. But if you're in a spot, and I said 75% of the owners out there, I don't want to say they don't deserve, that they don't deserve Bijan Robinson, but their team is not ready to have Bijan Robinson, right? We always say that last piece you want is that running back because the running back shelf life is a little bit less. For me, what would you say to a guy that's like, hey, I'm trying to build my team around wide receivers. How do you compare Bijan Robinson to Lamb, A.J. Brown, and Waddle, and what kind of plus could you get there? I mean, there's something to be said where if I move from Bijan Robinson to CeeDee Lamb, and now I'm a little bit more liquid, I have probably has a little bit more longevity, but they might not have that star power. Can you get a plus on top of CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, and Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, you should be able to. I think right now, I don't think anybody's trading the 101 for any of those guys. And it's hard to say what kind of plus you can get on top of them. I think it's kind of league dependent, and it really depends on how thirsty that person is for the 101. There's some guys that don't have a 101 and they pay their whole soul, everything they own, couple kids, whatever they have, they'll probably trade it out for the 101. So
I got 4 of them, so I got some to spare if we're talking 101.
Yeah, I do have quite a few, and I don't think I would trade a 101 for CD unless there was, man,
right?
I don't know.
It's a tough call because I started just thinking about this when I was talking about it with John. Is if you're not ready for a running back to be your key focal point of that offense. I mean, I always talk about when we are rebuilding teams, when we're retooling teams, I'm trying to move running backs for these wide receivers because I can see CeeDee Lamb having 6, 7, 8, wide receiver 1 type seasons or something like that. So, I mean, if I could get right now, give Bijan in a third for Lamb in a second and just be in that area, like the running backs, we saw it with Jonathan Taylor. It's better to be a year ahead. It's better to insulate with wide receivers than it is with that volatile running back position. And I don't want to play too many devil's advocate there because we love Bijan. We're super excited. At the 111, I think I'm taking him over any of those guys. But I think if you're in that situation, you got to at least kick the tires and be like, if I move back to one of these guys, what kind of plus can I get? And I think that's a deserved conversation. The second round, we got the 102 going at 203. It's consistently going in that 203 to 208 range. And I think there's a divide here, Mike, where we have Bijan's at 111 to the 203. That's not a big gap when you're talking startups. But when you're talking value right now, I'm seeing guys trading the 102 and the 105, which the 105 in our draft went in the third round. So we're talking a second and a third round, mid-second and a third rounder for that 111. And I think there's a huge disconnect right there. I mean, if that wasn't Bijan Robinson, are you really trading a second and third rounder to move into that area? And I think that's something that we got to look at when it comes to startup values.
Yeah. So you're right. It's not as big of a gap as it should be. Because there's no way that you're making that trade in a startup unless it's not Bijan, like you said. Because I mean, I don't know. I'm not sold on Young or Stroud for that matter that high in the draft personally. I do I don't know. I like the slide, that I've been seeing earlier in startups where they were going at the end of the second and
Yeah, that
mid
was nice
third.
value. That
Um,
2-3 turn, I really like that. But when they start creeping up above Jalen Waddle, above Deshaun Watson, above Dak Prescott, above even Brees Hall, I'm like, I'm not sure if I can invest that way yet, because even from that last podcast, Stroud and Young are nice. I think they're going to be like, back end QB1s, but I don't see either of them right now being in that area where they're going to be a top 5 dynasty quarterback.
yeah, I would actually imagine they're going ahead of where they're going to go next year right now. So they're going he's going, I guess you could say Young's going early second, and then
Yep.
Stroud is going late second, early third. I think they'll both go in the third next year. I think we're going to
Because when you
see.
compare them, and when we just talked about Fields and Lawrence, I do not look at them as the same type of prospects. Like I don't see them as guys who you're taking in that second round and they're going to appreciate into first rounds. Like I see them as guys that they're going to fall in this area. Even if they have a real rock solid rookie year, I think they're still going to be in that second round startup area. So you're not. I like to draft players where I feel like they're going to appreciate in value. And
Sure.
if they aren't
Yeah.
guys that are going to appreciate in value, that's why I tier back and add value to it. And that's what I did pretty much this whole draft. It was just a matter of, if I don't like the value right there, I'm going to move back and add value to it as I go.
Yep.
The next area where I'm talking about is Dak Prescott. You got at the 207. And I think Dak Prescott is someone that I'm not even going to ask smash or pass. I think this is an absolute smash. Like Dak Prescott last year was going that 110 to 112 range. He's still only 28 years old, and Dak Prescott is a QB1 when he's on the field. I think you get that Dallas discount, which is a bizarre thing to say because most people just don't want Dallas Cowboys on their team. It's crazy to even think that way, and I try to take my emotions out of it. I know you do too. I think Dak Prescott is the biggest value of the second round right now. If you look at where he's going versus the production that he's put up in the past, and he's in the prime of his career, I think Dak Prescott is one of the best, highest ceiling and safest floor in that second round.
Yeah, I agree. I think people look too heavily into their real life production, and then they don't really care for the fantasy. They think, oh, Dak doesn't win in actual football games or this and that. He's doing this, he's doing that, he's throwing turnovers, and they're not looking at the fact that he's putting up 25 to 30 points in a fantasy game, even when he's doing, crazy. Those I see, that's why you want to take people that are also in the fantasy or in the actual NFL playoffs, because you can get that serious discount. Dak's going to slide even farther now after that game, I'm sure. So that goes into the whole reactionary side of fantasy football, where people, see what they see, the recency bias kicks in, and then, they're like, oh, Dak sucked last night. I'm going to pass on him and I'm going to go to someone else. So
yeah. And he became an extreme value there. And I mean, you and I made a trade where it was Dak and your 24 first, and then I gave you a small pick upgrade in Lamar Jackson. And I think it works out well for all of us. And I think if you can tier back again, if you can get out of that first round, I mean, we're talking about a scenario where you can move back from, I think I'm not passing up on Fields and Lawrence, but if Kyler and Lamar go in that area, I'm okay to cascade back to Dak Prescott, to Deshaun Watson. But I'm not comfortable. I have a lot of people reaching out and be like, hey, I can get Deshaun Watson in the 24 first for Josh Allen. Absolutely not. I think Deshaun Watson is a very interesting topic because we were all expecting maybe 2 games of rust, right? But he played at a level that we were not used to seeing. Like, we all anticipated Deshaun Watson was going to break into what he has been in the past. Where do you have him in your second round, and how bullish are you? I mean, you and I both talked. I think his value is going to steadily creep back up, but what we saw in the field over those final, 6-7 weeks was not all that impressive to me.
Yeah, he actually just went. I'm in a Devi startup right now, and he just went to 201, I believe. So
wow,
that was the highest I've seen him go since the start of the offseason. And I think it's the right move. I think he's going to only get better with a full camp and then getting those practice reps with those guys. And I don't think he was allowed to even be Was he allowed to practice? I don't even know off the
Not in
top
the
of my head
beginning. You know, we come
if he
out
was
and he's,
allowed.
you know, it did gradually go up, you know, and in week 17, he did have a nice 31 point performance. So he's back in that QB1 territory.
Yeah.
He's someone that's going to steadily creep up there. But I think now's not the time. You know, like if you can buy him on the cheap, I would do it. But I think he's going to steadily climb up. And I'm not super bullish on him, but I think eventually this value is going to catch up. And we should see a better version of what we saw in the actual fantasy regular season. However, you know, this isn't the Houston Texans where he's got negative game scripts everywhere. I mean, this is a team that still wants to run the ball, and I think Cleveland is going to be a much better team next year than they were this year.
Yeah, so just to kind of elaborate on that, I get a lot of the questions of the 102 or Watson, and
Yeah,
I always
that's a lot.
Yeah, I take the 102 because Watson's not going to do a single thing to improve his value from now until next season. I mean, you might see some camp videos where he's, you know, hitting Amari Cooper, you know, here and there or whatever, but he's not going to take that huge jump that, you know, the 102 will take in the next few months, especially once the combine hits and everything. So to kind of go off of that, you know, I think I would always take Brees or Stroud and then kind of flip that asset before or during the rookie draft, at least. You know, you could probably get Watson plus for on the rookie draft if you wanted to.
You're speaking my love language right there. You know, that's like one thing when it comes to startups. If you're ever debating a player or a pick, right? And we do this all the time. The pick is what's safest right now, right? That pick in that 102, and that is a question that I get a lot too. Is like, Dad, do I? The question for me is Watson or Dak and the 102. I get a lot of those where they're in that area, and I slightly lean Dak, but I'm taking the 102 over Watson at this point just to kind of gauge where that value is and see what I can do with it, because I think on draft day, like you said, we're going to have that hype on Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, and they're going to really elevate what their value is, where Watson, you're not going to see anything, right? I mean, we're not going to see anything where you're going to be like, wowed. You know, he's going to be 28 years old and he's going to be in this area. Once the regular season rolls around, yeah, I want Deshaun Watson. I think he moves up there. We have an interesting dynamic here then, right? Is we got Brees Hall at 205 and Jonathan Taylor at 208. Right now on the clock, you know, given that Brees Hall had the ACL tear, and we keep seeing all these talk about, you know, J.K. Dobbins ACL tear and all these other different players in the past versus Jonathan Taylor at 208, which one of these guys do you prefer, and based off the value that you're seeing right now?
Based off the value, I think they're both in the right spot. But I to, you know, piggyback what we've been saying is I'm going to take Brees over JT because I think JT right now is never going to get drafted higher than where he is.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to creep back into the high second or the late first. I think right now where he is, like mid to late second, that's his peak currently, you know. Yeah. He's only going to go backwards. Whereas Brees can still go higher. He can creep into the high second. He can maybe get into the late first if he blows up this year. He has that time, you know, that's why we talk about running backs being so unpredictable and volatile, but you don't really see running backs boost ADP season to season. It's usually they're peaked out and then they're slowly going down the board.
Yeah, and I think it's a kind of a thing where a lot of fantasy owners, they have that bad taste in their mouth, right? They had, let's say, with Christian McCaffrey, right? So Christian McCaffrey was a guy that got injured, and he never creeped back up. He's always been in that area, and in this draft, he even goes at 210. But there's nothing Christian McCaffrey could do to put himself back up there, and he's a little bit older. Jonathan Taylor, 24 years old in comparison to Brees Hall, but Brees Hall's was the injury. Jonathan Taylor's was poor production, you know, and I think Indianapolis is going to be in a situation where that's going to be very hard for him to recoup some value. So I like that a lot. We mentioned Brees Hall, and I think when I talk about the Jets are an up-and-coming offense. There's a lot of rumor right now. I mean, let's be honest. Right now, they will get a better quarterback for 2023. I mean, that's a given, right? I mean, Zach Wilson's out of the picture. Mike White just wasn't it, you know, and he had that moxie, but he's just not it. One way or another, and I'm seeing links to Aaron Rodgers, I'm seeing links to Derek Carr, you know, maybe they draft a quarterback. But I think we're going to see a huge uptick in the value of Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is one of my biggest buys. The way he played as a rookie, he is right there at that 302, right above Tyreek Hill. I feel like this is good value, but smash or pass Garrett Wilson at the 302.
I smashed that. Yeah, I'll
I
take him.
love it. What he did his rookie season is just like we're sleeping on it, right? I mean, I think what he did with absolute poor quarterback play, and we have him below. We have him below Kenneth Walker, which Kenneth Walker was good. We have him below the 103. We have him below Christian McCaffrey. Amon-Ra St. Brown, even Kyle Pitts in this draft, and I think Garrett Wilson is going to continue to creep up. And as soon as that quarterback comes into play, I feel like he could be a mid-second rounder with some real camp buzz.
I think he'd probably be going where Waddle is right now. I think he would actually creep into like the early second.
I love that.
Yeah, I can't see him taking a step back after what we saw. I just see improvement happening, and especially with a Carr or a Rodgers coming in there. Anybody for that matter. I don't care who it is. Well, actually, I can't say I don't care who it is, but I think anything they do is going to be, like you said, a significant improvement.
It's going to be an improvement. And what I've been advocating, what I've been telling people, and this is how I operate, is I love A.J. Brown. I love CeeDee Lamb. I love Jalen Waddle. But right now, we're talking about 1 round in a startup difference in value. And I've seen trades where CeeDee Lamb and a late, 108, 109 for Garrett Wilson. And I think we're going to have a scenario where 2-3 weeks into the season, Garrett Wilson's in that same breath. Like, he is going to be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. And I think if you make that move now where you get that plus, and in this class, the 108, you're looking at maybe even Jordan Addison. You're looking at maybe Quentin Johnson. You're getting a premium asset on top of that. And I think this is the next big-time wide receiver. He will be top 5. I have no doubt about it.
For sure.
The next guy in that round, and this is where it gets really, really difficult, is the tight ends, right? So in that third round, in Smash Accept leagues, we play a 1.75 tight end premium, and Mark Andrews went 3.0, Pitts went 3.01, Andrews went 3.06, Kelsey 3.07, Hawkinson 3.08. What's the biggest value here for you out of that? And let's talk about tight ends a little bit, because this is a position where these are the guys. These are those 4 guys. I like another guy that in a round later here. But let's talk about tight ends a little bit. What's the best value here jumping off the board to you? And we've never had a position like this where it's been like such an age discrepancy, right? I mean, between the tight end 1, the tight end 2, there's such an age discrepancy based off of what your team's going to look like.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say any of those are values. I would say they're pretty much par with where they should go in a tight end premium league. I mean, Kelsey is the cheat code until he proves otherwise, until he shows me that he's not putting up 20 to 30 points a game, catching 12 balls and just, getting that crazy premium every game. This
is the exact same spot. I mean, I took him in Smash 4 and Smash 5. I won the championship in Smash 5 because of that, and I drafted him at 307 in that draft. And what you want from a guy that's you're in a win now team. I mean, like, we're looking at this round. Tyreek Hill goes in here. Travis Kelce. Both these guys, even Austin Eckler, were going in this round last year. They're still going there, and they're still holding that value. It's just when it dips, it falls off. And I think Travis Kelce, we're going to still see. If you told me he was the tight end 1 next year, I would not even hesitate. I would agree. He's got to be the favorite there. But I think this is still a guy that we're going to see 2 to 3 years of still high-end production even after this year that we just saw. And he's just such a cheat code. I have a hard time taking anybody over him.
Yeah, he could definitely be a Tony Gonzalez. He could play till he's 38 and still put up over 1,000 yards and catch 12 touchdowns or whatever. I don't expect him to be the absolute monster that he is right now, but I think he can be a serviceable fantasy asset, barring any injury, for at least another 2 to 3 years. Andrews is my tight end 1 still, even, with Kelsey, and the age definitely plays a role in dynasty. But win now, it's got to be Kelsey. I've seen him go at the early second. I've seen him go pretty high as of late. just for teams that are just going for it, because you can't pass up on him at tight end premium.
My play right now, and what I've been kind of doing is, I mean, I love Kelsey, so I have a hard time moving off him. But I have moved off Andrews for my guy's Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is going to 5th round, and I still think there's almost a first round value in between the two. And he has really, with Jalen Hurts, there was always that Jalen Hurts doesn't throw to tight ends. He just, when he was on the field this year, excelled. And I think I'm buying Dallas Goedert wherever I can. If I can get a plus on top of, if I give Andrews, I think you could get the 107 and Dallas Goedert for Mark Andrews, and I think that's something I'm willing to do, or a 24 first in that area. Same, I think Kyle Pitts really could ascend, but now is that time to buy him. I mean, we saw last year he was creeping up in the end of that first round. Are you buying Kyle Pitts right now, or where are you at with him? Because I get that question at least once a week. You're like, Dad, Kyle Pitts, what do I do? If you had him, you can't sell him because you've invested so much in him last year. But what are you doing with your Kyle Pitts shares? I don't have any because I never believe in investing that kind of capital in a tight end. For me, that's the last piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I don't have any more Pitts either because he hurt me so bad.
This is that point of the podcast where we play some like sad, sappy music.
Yeah,
maybe
he destroyed me. I had 8 shares of him, and it was buyer's remorse, and I didn't trade for him, but I had him in most drafts. And in Smash, 6, I took him in the first round. And then I traded him for the 104. And I don't know. It wasn't good.
I mean, it wasn't good at the time, but you at least recoup some value. And this is what we talk about insulating all the time. I was screaming on the podcast to sell Kyle Pitts for Mark Andrews plus a 22 first at the time. And if you did that, you feel pretty good because you get that. And we're very good with assessing who that next guy is. And I think that's something that's really important here with our podcast. The difficult part about navigating that round 3, and we want to move on for sure, but we have running backs in here, right? And this is where we really start to hit that, what direction are you going? And for me, I try to decide what direction I'm going. Round 1 and 2, you can get the value, you can get the younger players. Round 3, it's like, do I want Saquon Barkley at 304, or do I want Eckler at 311 or Etienne at 312? I ultimately had that 312 and traded out of it and cascaded back to a guy that you absolutely love. I got Javonte Williams at 505 plus a 24 first. But which running backs are you really trusting in this area? For me, my biggest thing is I'm almost moving out of this. I think because of that running back landscape that, if you guys didn't listen to Smash or Pass episode 1, we really hit that hard. But it's a volatile position right now. Saquon Barkley at 304, he had a fantastic season. Eckler was the RB1 at 311. For me, Etienne at 312, I'm like, I'm going to cascade back and get into that 5th round, add some capital, because the 5th round is just loaded with running backs as well.
Yeah, I think in that range, you can't go wrong with Etienne because I don't see his value dipping at all, especially with T-Law taking, that presumed step forward and that team getting a lot better offensively. Mm-hmm. I'm back in on Najee. I do like Najee again.
I am too.
I'm back in on him.
Yeah. We were talking about it a little bit at the end of the year last year, right? Where we were like, dude, we can buy him for like a 24 late first. And people are just, they want him off their team. In this particular draft, I mean, I think Najee went 508. We were talking about a guy that was going early second. And what you saw over the back end of the year was once Pickett started getting a lot more comfortable in the offense, we were starting to see him more involved in the passing game, getting some touchdowns. I love that, man. I'm on board with that completely.
I like Swift too. A couple guys that like Swift is interesting because he really he hurt a lot of managers, but his value hasn't taken that significant dip that you presume he would. A guy that didn't see a lot of carries, he didn't see a lot of goal line work. He got, Jamal Williams had a career year. It was just all these little factors that I don't see coming into play next year on a contract year. Swift is going to be on a contract year. He's going to demand that playing time. He's going to demand that work. He wants touchdowns. He's going to want, to show out. He wants a career year. He wants to get paid. So I want to get all the the Swift shares that I can get, especially at that discounted ADP, because I think he's going in the fourth, maybe even fifth in some spots too.
That fourth round is a real hotbed of value. I mean, in our particular draft, I took Trey Lance at 401. 402 was the 104, and I think right now I just put that thread out there on JSN. He's my 104, and man, like if you could tell me I could get JSN in that same area as Devonta Smith and Metcalf, I'm all for that. I mean, I think the production profile from, we get that 2022 is giving you a discount on him because JSN is going to be in the same breath as a Jamar Chase, as a Justin Jefferson. I don't think he's going to be right there right off the bat, but this is a guy that has that similar type profile. And, I saw we're going to reference that a couple other times because there's a lot of, data to back that. But this is an area where in that fourth round, I mean, we got guys like Drake London, who I think Drake London is going to smash this year. I mean, what he did over the final 5 weeks, the target share that he demanded. And again, like Garrett Wilson, he's one of my biggest buys because the quarterback play in Atlanta was abysmal, But when Ritter took over, he looked much better than what we saw with Mariota.
Yeah, London's a big buy for me. I don't think anybody's selling, but if you can get him in a startup where he's going, I think that's an easy smash. Yeah, and then JSN going where he's going, I see, man, and this most recent startup, he was going in between Debo. I can't remember who else was in that area, but it was where Debo's going.
I remember you messaged me. You were like, Devonta Smith, Debo, or JSN, and I'm like, oh my gosh. It's Smith and Jigba. It's not even close. What he did in 2021 was just insane, and I think kind of out of sight, out of mind. We did that with Jamar Chase, where we're like, okay, he sat out a year, and then we were like, oh, he had some drops. Let's move him back out of the area. That was foolish. I'm not doing it again. Jackson Smith and Jigba is the real deal. I'm excited for all my 104 shares, and I want to get him in that area. You mentioned Swift, and there's a hotbed here in that Jacobs goes 409, Swift 410, and then you have that 106, 105, 106 area. I think depending on what league you're in, the running backs and the picks really start to become a value. But if you're posed with that position of Jacobs, Swift, or 106, what are you taking?
I would take the 106. I think I would have Jacobs and Swift probably closer to the 107, 108.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think they're on that edge. They're really close, but not to say that I just told you that I'm really in on Swift this year, but I think
no, but you're absolutely right because we have a situation where I think the rookie picks, the 102 and the 103 are going way too early, and the 104 and 105 are falling back. And you're looking at, and even 106, in that range, I mean, these quarterbacks are going to start moving up. Anthony Richardson's starting to get some buzz. Will Levis is starting to get some buzz. They're going to move up to quarterback-needy teams, and you're going to have Gibbs, you're going to have Smith and Jigba, you're going to have Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Zach Evans is starting to really, pique my interest. And these guys are going to be in that area where, gosh, I mean, they're going to be some fantastic football players.
Yeah, you got Jack Sharp coming in too, and this class is insane. I can't say it enough, and we've been saying this for almost 2 years now, but it's like, the 112 in this class is going to be a starter on your fantasy team. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
At some point next season, you're going to be starting that guy.
People don't get it right now. I don't know if you saw the tweet, but in Smash 3, I now have 101 through 112. The Infinity Gauntlet is completely filled now. And I had a bunch of people reach out, Mike, and they're like, man, this guy doesn't know how to win. Like, this is not going to work. I'm like, guys, do a startup. Okay, right now, if you're doing a startup, they're all gone by the end of the 6th round. The first rounders are gone. So, like, imagine that. Like, these are to go with the other players on your team. You're going to get 12 starters that are, like, in that area or be able to trade them for significant value. And they're only going to go up. They're literally only going to go up.
That's the thing. People see that you have all these picks and they see that you've accumulated the whole first round, and they don't understand that these are assets. These are pieces that you can use to dangle in front of other managers. You can take them and sell them. You can do whatever you want with these picks. They're they're going to only, accrue value. They're going
Right.
to go up in value, going to go up while, any player that you have in place of them isn't going to do much to get their value up, especially in the off season. They're
We're
not
just
getting a crazy value.
trying to shift your thinking a little bit with you guys. We have a lot of new listeners really about our insulated trades and making moves like that and trying to assess these things. We want to put you that 107. You're going to have it's in the same area as Michael Pittman, Devontae Adams, Dallas Goedert, Javonte Williams. So that 107 isn't just a draft pick. It's going to give you opportunities when on the clock. Don't trade them until you get on the clock to get these kind of things. So the one guy that I mentioned there, and I know you and I are both actively buying him everywhere, is Javonte Williams. I think Javonte Williams was a guy that was a second-round startup last year. Again, based off the injury, everybody's moved him way down. I've been buying, in the offseason, I was buying for 24 firsts or late 23 firsts during the playoff run. And I think Javonte Williams is still undervalued because people feel like because of the Melvin Gordon split that they had there for a little bit, for a couple weeks, they're like, oh, he wasn't going to take over. I think Javonte Williams is a smash right now.
Yeah. I love that he is still at that discounted price, and he will stay there he might even dip even lower. If he's not ready for the season, people might be at that Dobbins mode where they're just ready to, take anything for him.
Yeah.
I got Dobbins for, man, I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't good. It was like Foreman in a third or Foreman in a late second, I think at one point in time. People would get frustrated, and especially teams that are competing. I think, you can get Javonte for pennies on the dollar. If this guy doesn't have good depth and he just needs to move off somebody for a body, in his, where he's going right now in startups, yeah, it's an easy smash. Even if you only get half a year from him next year, I think it's well worth it.
And I think the biggest takeaway I have when it comes to these startups, we're trying to load up on these quarterbacks and wide receivers early, and this seems like the best year to do that. Like if you can be patient and skip out on Jonathan Taylor, but take Garrett Wilson, and if you can on the third round instead of taking Saquon Barkley, take like a Chris Olave type where they're still moving up, and then these rounds 4 where you got guys like Swift and Jacobs, round 5. You got Javonte Williams and Najee. Round 6, they're 6. They start to guys keep falling back, and then round 7, 8, 9, you're getting Derrick Henrys, you're getting Dalvin Cooks. Where I'm not a huge advocate of going out and buying them, but the value on these running backs. I know you got Derrick Henry at the end of the 6th, and then we were looking at Mixon went in the 7th. At the end of the 8th, I ended up getting at the end of the 9th, I got Aaron Jones. These are screaming values in comparison. I took Aaron Jones. The guy before me took Jordan Love and David Njoku. There is a huge age bias there. And how do you talk to people about that, right? Because, I'm in a punt, but people are like, man, you got a bunch of old guys on your team. I was like, value is value to me. That's what I was saying is Aaron Jones went after the 203. Aaron Jones is 28 years old, but he's coming off another RB1 season, and he's the tread on the tires is still plenty to go out there and have another RB1 season.
Yeah, I think people are burned from the 2016 class, the 2015 class, where Todd Gurley's and Devontae Freeman's and the people that faded out at 25. They saw all these guys. Le'Veon Bell just disappeared at 26.
Yeah.
These guys, they created this idea in the fantasy community that there's this age cliff that every running back's going to hit. Every player is going to hit this age cliff at the same age every time.
I think Derrick Henry's the biggest proof of that, right? I mean, he's going to be he's 29 years old now, but he just went out and balled out.
Yeah, the entire 2017 class of Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry and Fournette and all those
Fournette,
guys. They're starting
in the 15th round because nobody wanted him. There was just this stigmatism of he's worth nothing. But I mean, when you're in, there's always, we want to talk about that youth, right? And you're gonna get crushed by this, but I call it the Nico Collins syndrome, right? Where you want the next Nico Collins because he sounds good and he's young, instead of taking that value of the guy that's right there. And even if you're not win now, you trade that value of that of that running back or that veteran because everybody's going to want them. And I had the hardest time trying to trade Nico Collins. I didn't mean to stab you right in the heart, but
Yeah, that's okay, man. I like the misses getting smushed into my face, because
no, I was
I
on
need
board
that.
with you. You and I
know
in the
we both
Patreon were like,
we were trading
Nico,
seconds for him.
right?
We were trading 23 seconds for Nico Collins.
Yeah.
And
this doesn't make us sound good for the next pod, but
don't listen to these guys.
Hey, we're going to be very honest with you guys. We're going to tell you our hits and we're going to share our misses. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that we have to do. The 6th round has some guys where there's some wide receivers there that we might have missed on in rookie drafts, but the 6th round is just loaded with wide receivers, right? So if we end up going, round 1 and 2, get our quarterbacks. Round 3 and 4, get a wide receiver. Round 5, maybe take a Javante. Round 6, there's some juicy wide receivers here and some upside. I mean, there's Hollywood Brown, who I know you love, has big time potential with Hopkins leaving. Jamison Williams goes in this round. Chris Godwin, who's going to be a year removed from that ACL surgery, who could still ball out. Christian Watson, who I know a lot of people, especially I talk to Zoltan all the time, he loves, big time advocate for picking up him. Pickens is in this round. This is a absolutely upside wide receiver round. If you have to pick one guy out of this group, who's that guy for you?
I think at the current draft position they're in, I would take Hollywood, because he's the injury and everything. His people are kind of saying he's injury prone and this and that, and I'm not buying it. And he's had this 1 year of not being available, but outside of that, he's been steadily on the field. And when he played without Hopkins on the field, he was a wide receiver 1. He's putting up steady numbers, the whole time. Even when Hopkins came back, he was still pretty solid until that injury. But I think he's at a severe discount right now because people are seeing Kyler's injury and then they're seeing him out, and all that recency bias is kicking in on him. I think he's a great value there, and I think he's going to steadily rise as far as ADP goes as time goes on in the season too.
For me, I know a lot of guys in the Patreon love Jamison Williams, and that's going to be their pick. For me, I'm taking Christian Watson. I mean, from week 10 on, he was a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. I know there was some gimmicky plays. I know he's due for some touchdown regression, but this is the time of year where we tell ourselves narratives one way or another, right? Let's say he becomes a better wide receiver because we knew he was raw. He wasn't one of those big time prospects coming in as far as where he went to college. But I think Christian Watson is someone who's going to eat in year 2 and only become a better wide receiver, with working with Aaron Rodgers, if Rodgers is still there. The quarterback position is so up and down. But at 6'11", you and I are our biggest buy at the quarterback position, and I think he's cheaper now than he was 2 weeks ago, is Danny Dimes. Danny Dimes, I was advocating for everybody. I talked 2 different guys into cascading off of Tua to get Daniel Jones in a mid-23 first. I think if you look at it, Daniel Jones put up better numbers than Tua. If you go down and you look at it closely, because he's got that rushing upside that Tua does not have. And I know Dynasty Jacobian would just come in here and start, like a bull.
Jacobian's been telling people to buy Jones, though. He's in the Vanilla Vic category. If he wants
I love
people
that
to go
name.
buy him.
Daniel Jones is he's too cheap. I mean, right now he went in this draft as QB 15. And I think that's kind of where he goes. But if you look from rounds 3 on, there was no quarterbacks taken. Like in that 3 to 6 range, everybody sees the upside. There's huge upside with Daniel Jones, and I know we're going to cover that more, and we're getting a little bit short on time. But that's a guy that we're going out there and buying everywhere. And
and he's about to sign a big contract too. He's about to sign that big contract, and then his value is going to skyrocket.
He's coming back to the Giants. You have this opportunity. You talked about it. He had a poor showing against the Eagles, and now is the time to go and buy him because his season was fantastic. What he did with Brian Dable was incredible, and I thought he played really well down the stretch. And it's tough in this area with quarterbacks. Round 7, this is where we start to reach on some quarterbacks, right? But there's some guys there with some value. I mean, Pickett goes there, Goff goes there, Carr. I took Mac Jones at 801. who are you buying out of that group? Because this is where we're going to talk about in the Superflex Super Shortage show with a Smash Accept, but like this is where it gets really difficult. Like I got to get my QB2 before there are no more QB2s.
I would buy all those guys. I like that. Like all those guys, I like at current ADP. You know, Pickett, Goff, and even Mac Jones, because I think that Bill O'Brien's gonna, anything's gonna be an upgrade right now over the defensive coordinator that they had running the offensive show. But I like all those guys. I think Goff they're gonna sign him on, and he's only gonna get Jameson back, and that whole offense is gonna be humming next year too.
Yeah, no, I think there's again, it's a narrative thing. A lot of people are like, well, what if Detroit drafts a quarterback? I don't think that's the direction they're going. I mean, Jared Goff seems to be their guy unless they can really move up. And I think Jared Goff is someone who just gets disrespected, right? Like he's Jared Goff because he had that one really good year with the Rams. Then he had a down production year, and he's never really recouped that value. I was buying him for 24 first in the playoffs, and he was winning me championships because he went out there and he put up 30-plus points. I mean, Jared Goff at home he's that perfect guy for your QB3, but you're okay with him as your QB2.
Yeah.
And the position is just so tight. Derek Carr is just another guy where no one wants Derek Carr right now, but Derek Carr is going to be cheap. He's going to get another landing spot. If he goes to the Jets where he has Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Breece Hall at his disposal, or he goes to the right situation, he's going to get an uptick in value. And I think when you're talking rounds 8, 9, and 10, we got to start thinking narratives of how are these guys going to bump up in value. And another guy there is Aaron Rodgers. It sounds like Green Bay is comfortable trading him for 2 first-round picks. If Aaron Rodgers goes to one of those situations and he gets out of that, Green Bay scenario where they won't give him weapons, let's say he goes somewhere where he's got some wide receivers again, that is a absolute value if he ends up coming back and doing those things, and there's some value to be had there. Round 9, I mean, there's other guys in there. That Cam Akers ended the season very well. Rashad Bateman's starting to get a little bit of uptick. There's so many guys here. When you're drafting rounds 8 through 12, talk to me a little bit about your thought process, because it's really bizarre because you got your Kamaras and your Rodgers, guys that are a little bit older in age. Then you got your Akers, you got your draft picks and those early second-round picks. Everyone's got a different philosophy. Tell the listeners a little bit about what you're thinking in rounds like 8 through 12, because I think you can make or break your draft in this area. Rounds 1 through 5, everybody knows who they're going to take, but this area where this is what people need to beef up on.
Yeah, so once you're in that area, you usually have if you're a 0 running back guy, you're probably looking for running backs. But I never go off of need later in the draft. I never
Absolutely.
say, "Oh, I need a running back right now, so I'm going to take a running back." I throw that out the window. I don't care.
January, right? I mean, you don't need a running back. So many people say they took Alvin Kamara over Jameson Williams at that certain point in the draft because they needed a running back. No, you didn't. You have all offseason. We're smashing except we're trading. Take the value.
You take value. You take value in those rounds. You look at who's going to go up in value. You look at who is kind of dipped right now. You're kind of looking at this person's going to definitely have a sell window. Regardless of what my team needs, I'm going to take that person, and then I'm going to wait for the right moment, and then I'm going to put them on the block, or I'm going to look for a package to sell them for based off of what that person needs, and then it's kind of see what comes my way, and there's no way that I'm passing on, like you said, and a crazy value because I don't have 4 wide receivers at the moment or whatever.
And take the value that hits you. I mean, and don't like for instance, I got David Montgomery in the 12th round because people were like, "Oh, David Montgomery's not going to be a starter." What if he is? There's a definite scenario where he comes back to Chicago or he goes to the right area, and in that area, it was like wide receivers like Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I like, but how much more is he going to increase in value over the offseason? Donovan Peoples-Jones is who he is, right? But David Montgomery goes to the right situation, he gets an uptick. Then you move him. Dynasty is a cyclical event. We're trying to move things in there. So I'm excited. We just wanted to share some of our insights, some of our thoughts, some of the guys that we're buying in those top 10 rounds. Mike, Smash or Pass, episode 2, it just keeps getting better, keeps getting more fun. the mic upgrade. You know, it just sounds better.
Tell everybody. Yeah, the mic upgrade is great, but it's also picking up on every sound in the whole house. So
we're getting there.
I can't.
But tell everybody where they can find you and your government name if you want to. No, I'm just.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at NerdBoyTakes. Like I said last week, my DMs are always open. If you guys have any questions on startups or need help with any trades, please send them over, and I'm more than willing to help you guys out.
Yeah, and it's startup season. My DMs are crazy right now, so feel free to hit me up. And the Discord will be set up by the end of the week. Where you guys can come in there and just. There's going to be rooms for Mike. There's going to be a room for me where you can ask us specific questions. There's going to be a general room where you can just shoot the breeze. There's going to be a room for just 2023 draft picks. There's going to be a spot for sit starts. Everything you need is just going to be in one group. And we talked about this when we launched the Smash and Set Patreon chat. It's like your girlfriend doesn't want to hear about your team. Your wife doesn't want to hear about your team. Your guys at work don't want to, but we do. Like, we're going to help each other out there. And it's just become such a fun community. And, that's honestly where I met Mike. And it's just a fun environment where you guys can learn and become better Dynasty owners. So thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.
Thank you, guys.